Midnight, a small apartment. A man sits alone at his kitchen table, laptop open. On the screen, 4 overlapping circles: passion, mission, vocation, profession. He has filled in all 4. Good job. Real skills. People who need him. Money that comes in. Only one space is still empty. The center. The place where, according to the diagram, all 4 circles are supposed to meet, where his one true purpose is supposed to be waiting for him. He has redrawn this diagram 4 times tonight. He has a job people envy, a life that, from the outside, looks finished, and he cannot find a single word to write in the middle of it. He does not know this yet, but he is about to learn that the diagram itself was never the problem he thought it was. It was never Japanese to begin with. You may know this feeling, even if your circles look different from his. You did the things you were told would give your life meaning. You found the job, the hobby, the relationship, the routine. You checked the boxes life handed you. And somewhere underneath all of it, quietly, a question keeps returning that none of those boxes ever answered. What is this all actually for? You have probably heard the word for what you're missing: Ikigai, your reason for being. You may have even seen the diagram, the 4 circles, promising that if you just find where they overlap, the question finally closes. I have walked beside people asking this question for a very long time. And I have learned something the diagram never tells you. It did not come from a monastery. It did not come from a sage. It came from somewhere far harder and far more honest. A place where a doctor once asked people who had lost nearly everything a single different question. Once you hear what she actually asked, you will understand why the diagram was never going to give you an answer. People tell me they already know Ikigai. It's a Japanese life hack, they say. 4 circles, find the overlap. That's the secret to purpose. I have walked this country in every century since long before that diagram existed. I have never once seen it in a temple, a text, or a teaching passed down by anyone who lived here. Because Ikigai was never a diagram at all. It was a question. And the person who first studied it seriously was not a monk or a philosopher. She was a psychiatrist. Her name was Mieko Kamiya. In the 1950s and 60s, Dr. Kamiya spent years working at a sanatorium called Nagashima Aisein, a place where patients with Hansen's disease, once known as leprosy, lived. Under a law that stayed in place in Japan until 1996, many of these patients had been separated from their families for life, sometimes for decades, often against their will. Think about what that means. Careers, gone. Families, gone. In many cases, even the future they had once imagined for themselves, gone. And yet, Dr. Kamiya noticed something she had not expected to find in a place like that. Some of her patients were not simply surviving. They were, in a quiet and specific way, still living, fully, meaningfully, despite having lost almost everything the 4-circle diagram would tell you that you need. So she began asking them directly, not what is your life's purpose, something smaller and far more useful. What makes today feel worth getting up for? In 1966, she published her findings in a book called Ikigai Nitsuite, about Ikigai. It remains, to this day, the first serious study of the word, and nowhere in it is there a diagram. There is only her real discovery. Ikigai was never one grand answer waiting to be found. It was something far smaller and far more repeatable than that. Let me show you what happens when a person searches for Ikigai the way the diagram teaches. Imagine a man named Kenji. Kenji did everything the diagram asked. He found work that used his skills. He found a hobby he was genuinely good at. He found people who needed him and a salary that let him live comfortably. 4 circles, 4 honest answers. And still, at night, the center stayed empty. So Kenji did what most people do when a plan fails. He assumed he simply hadn't tried hard enough. He took on a bigger project at work, hoping ambition would finally fill the gap. He picked up a more serious hobby, hoping passion at a higher intensity would finally do it. For a few weeks, it almost seemed to work. Then the feeling returned. Quieter this time, more tired. Kenji had made the same mistake almost everyone makes with this word. He was treating Ikigai like a single answer to solve once and be done with. A locked door, and if he just pushed harder, it would finally open. But that was never what Dr. Kamiya found in her patients. Her patients did not have 4 working circles. Many of them had none. No career, no mission anyone had asked of them, no profession left to return to. And some of them still had, unmistakably, whatever it is that word is actually pointing to. Which means the diagram was never testing for the right thing at all. Kenji was solving the wrong problem as hard as he possibly could. So what did Dr. Kamiya actually find, if not 4 circles meeting in the middle? It is said that when she asked her patients what made a day worth getting up for, the answers were rarely grand. No one described a mission. No one described a calling that explained their whole existence. They described small things. A patient who wrote short poems and felt something settle in his chest each time he finished one. A patient who taught another patient to read and felt useful in a way nothing else that week had made her feel. A patient who simply noticed every morning the exact way light changed on the garden wall. None of these were purposes, they were moments. Small, ordinary, repeatable moments where a person felt clearly and specifically that being alive right now was worth something. Dr. Kamiya gave this feeling its own name, Ikigai-kan. Not Ikigai as a fixed answer you find once. Ikigai-kan, the felt sense of it, arriving again and again in small doses, through attention rather than achievement. This is the piece the diagram leaves out entirely. It asks you to solve for Ikigai like an equation. Dr. Kamiya discovered it was never an equation. It was a practice of noticing. So Kenji tried something different. He stopped redrawing the diagram. Instead, each evening he wrote 1 line, not about his career, not about his purpose, about the one moment that day when he had felt, even briefly, that being alive was worth something. Some nights it was a real conversation with a friend. Some nights it was nothing more than good coffee on a quiet morning. He was not finding his Ikigai, he was practicing his Ikigai-kan. And slowly, the emptiness in the center of that old diagram stopped feeling like a problem he had failed to solve. I still think of a woman I once met many years after I first heard Dr. Kamiya's name. She was well into her 80s, living alone in a small apartment with a single window box on her sill. Every morning, without fail, she tended it, turned the soil, checked the small green shoots, watered exactly enough and no more. I asked her once what that little garden meant to her. She told me it didn't mean anything grand. She wasn't growing it to prove anything or to leave something behind or to fulfill some larger purpose. She grew it because each morning, tending it, she felt, clearly, specifically, that the day ahead was worth beginning. That was all. That was enough. She never once used the word Ikigai. She didn't need to. She had simply found her own Ikigai-kan, one ordinary morning at a time, the same way Dr. Kamiya's patients had decades before her. Perhaps that is the real secret this word was always pointing to. Not a diagram to complete, not a single answer to find and be finished with. Just one small thing, noticed and returned to, morning after morning. The rest tends to follow.